I interview every single person who comes to work for me, and I always have, with very rare exceptions. And so it really leads to some problems in the company, like if I'm on a trip for 5 days and we need to bring somebody in, I say, you know what, if they sit with me and I can look them in the eye and say, I always ask the same type of question. I say, how would you feel if I asked you to come in this weekend, to work because the servers were down, if it was like a developer or something, where I would ask people this at the magazine if we were behind on deadline, and what would happen if that happened 3 weekends in a row, how would you feel? And some people say, well, does that happen often? And some people say, well, I have a family, I need to take care of that. Totally valid. Some people would say, like, well, that's publishing. Some people would say, well, I hope we would do our work, smart enough that wouldn't happen every weekend. But you can sort of get a read for people. And some people are, I try to scare people in the interview. It's basically my technique. And I just tell them, like, this is going to be hard, you're going to suffer, but we're going to make great stuff. And you know what? I tell them, don't take the job unless you think you're going to be really committed, because everybody else here is not going to allow you to stay in here if you're not really into it. So I sort of try to create an entity where people who are not passionate get expelled by the system, and it just becomes obvious to people. And then it's really your responsibility to not hire people, because you don't want to put somebody who's punching a clock through that. It's not fair to them. I understand people want to punch a clock, it's a job.
But then don't go work for you.
But don't come work for me. Go work at a big company. Go work at Sony or IBM or someplace where maybe passion isn't required. But I look at a startup company. You have a very small amount of resources and a very small number of slots. So I look at it like I'm the coach of the Knicks, right? And I have 15 slots. And if somebody doesn't like to work out and they show up for training camp overweight and they're not paying attention, they're turning the ball over, it's like, not only are you wasting everybody else's time and making us lose, but maybe the next person we could get for that spot would be the next John Starks or Anthony Mason or Charles Oakley. Somebody maybe who doesn't have the resume you have, but will work hard. So I'm a blue-collar guy. I grew up blue-collar. My dad's a bartender. My mom's a nurse. I like the blue-collar, hard-working people who don't have that pretense. And you know what? This is a great country, because employment is at will, and you can go work somewhere else, and I can go work somewhere else, and you can create the environment you want. It doesn't all have to be the same.
You mentioned stock options before, but you and I have both seen a lot of stock options amount to nothing. So, do you pay well? Is compensation part of the equation?
Yeah, I always try to pay slightly better than the competitors, slightly better than the mainstream media jobs. So we try to pay 10 or 20% better than, say, a newspaper or something like that. But I always like to hire young people and give them their opportunity, because I was like as you know, when I started Silicon Valley Reporter, I was 24, 25 years old. And I love the idea of young people getting more responsibility than they're ready for, and really, having them overachieve and take 5 years out of their career path. I had 70 people working for me by the time I was 27 years old, and a $12 million, turnover a year. It was a big business, and people will rise to the occasion, certain people, and they want to take those 5 years out of their career path, so I look for those people. I love hiring young people.
Do you think you're a good mentor, and if so, what's your mentoring style?
Yeah, I think I am. I have a very open policy to information, so I explain every single thing I know, because what I've learned about leadership is the more information you share, the more you educate people of every single thing you know, the more they come back to you with other ideas to increase your knowledge base, and the less stress there is on you. So, for example, we use Google Analytics, right, to track how the site's going. I made every single person in the company go through mandatory Google Analytics training. Most people, when they're running a website, they don't give the Google Analytics to anybody because they want to have that proprietary information of knowing what's going on.
Keepers of the flame.
Exactly, and people want to, keep the data, or, the salesperson who's running the sales organization wants to keep the list of all the contacts, and they, only certain salespeople can see certain verticals. People develop software to keep people in an organization from getting to information, and, I always found that very bizarre. If you trust them enough to hire them and work with them every day, then just give them every piece of information you have. Let everybody share it and discuss it and debate it in a very flat structure. Don't create a lot of management, and create discourse. And I make myself not only available to my entire staff all the time, I make myself available to my enemies, my detractors, my fans, everybody.
You're very transparent.
It's the best way to run a business, because all you do is get ideas, and the work that is usually the responsibility of the CEO gets sent out to these, idiotic to think that you are smarter than everybody in the world. And I think that sometimes when you're in that CEO position or the founder position, you start to think, well, I had the initial vision, I'm so smart. But the collective intelligence is always going to trump individual intelligence.